So, welcome to a Mainstreet Masters series presented by Mainstreet SA. I'm David West, your host, and today we're talking about towns and city management with an expert in the field, the former CEO of the UK Association of Town and City Management, Martin Blackwell. Welcome, Martin.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Thank you. Can you tell me about your experience with place management and the path that actually led you to the Association of Town and City Management?
The concept of place management was fairly new in the late 1990s. And at that time, I was the store manager for a major high street chain. And I made the mistake of joining a committee. You never know where those things are going to lead you. So we got some funding as a committee to put together this notion of place management. And as it developed, I thought this is a really interesting job. So I gave up my steady 9 to 5 job with a good pension and took a plunge and didn't look back. So getting into place management was an accident, but a happy accident.
I certainly remember when I was in Rundle Mall actually looking for the sort of speak about place management, and I came across town centre management, and I said, "Wow, this is the way to go." And I know that you've been involved in also giving evidence to the government because the government needed more understanding of what place management actually was. Can you tell us a bit about
Yeah,
that?
yeah. So this is, maybe almost 25 years ago now, because I'd set up one of these first place management partnerships with a job title of town centre manager, but it was a voluntary partnership and it worked very, very well. But you don't have that certainty. And you persuade businesses to put some money in, you do it as a collective, but there are always some free riders people who, happy to come along and take the benefits without putting anything in. So I was asked by the UK government to give evidence to a select committee that were looking at this concept of business improvement districts. They'd taken the notion from the US, but there we looked at it and thought, we don't want to do it quite like this. It doesn't quite work because in the US, what they do is the bid member who pays this levy, a small levy on their property tax, is the property owner. But generally, they then pass the cost down to the occupier, which isn't necessarily the same thing. So the UK model, it's the occupier, the person who's going to get the benefit that joins the bid.
Yes, I'm really impressed with how you share the business plans, and even the smallest business gets involved in understanding what the bid is about.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And this concept of a business improvement district works on many levels. So if you go to a large city like London or Birmingham or Liverpool in the UK, they have multiple bids that cover different districts or neighborhoods. Whereas I'm working on a project at the moment in a very small town with only 7,000 inhabitants. So the model works across the whole piece.
I was going to ask you about that, about that the model can be adapted to actually suit so very small towns. So like a country town could do it,
Yeah.
and also larger cities and medium-sized cities. And why is it so flexible? How does that work?
Well, I think the key bit is taking the um, businesses with you, and when you set out, you're taking them on a journey. So you need to understand what their needs and aspirations are, what the issues the town is facing, what the opportunities are. And so when I do that, I use something which I call the GROW model, which I didn't invent. I found it and adapted it. And GROW is an acronym. So the G stands for goal. So you could do this in a workshop or over a period of time, but you're looking at what's the goal? What do we want to achieve? What do we want to get out of this? The R is, well, what's the reality? So where currently are we? What's the situation now? So when you've got those two things, you can then think about, okay, to take this forward, what are the options? That's the O in grow. And then you look at these and you put some aside. And then the W is the will. This is what we will do. This is what we're going to do. And that's where your business plan comes out. So the grow model stands for GROW. And so you are looking at, what the goals, the reality, the opportunity, and what we will do. And those is it's a great way of working through problems as a collective.
So I was going to say one of the smaller models is with the industrial sites, even so that even just a
Yeah.
small group of industrial businesses who don't want the traditional marketing and that sort of thing, that they can set their own goals and services that they want.
Yeah, completely. I mean, it's very, very flexible. You don't need huge numbers of businesses putting in vast amounts of money. You can tailor it to what you need. And there is one business improvement district in the UK that's on a river valley because they wanted to look at combat flooding potential as a business. So that's what they use their funding for. So, the model is everybody puts something in depending on the size of the business, but it's done for a minimum of 5 years. And therefore, there is some continuity and certainty around planning, but you have to demonstrate the value that you're going to deliver from this and who's going to do that. But it doesn't need huge amounts of money or huge numbers of businesses. The model works on any size.
So, in a traditional main street or city, what are some of the services that the bid might deliver?
Well, it depends again on the scale and the type, but the usual things are around marketing. That's always something that's really, really up there. Um, but it can be marketing to local people or to tourists, or just making sure that by local campaigns, it can be anything that you need it to be really. And I also think that this concept of working together is a key one. So one of the aspirations there would be to get everybody in the phrases singing from the same hymn sheet. But you've got to agree what the tune is first. And so this is a mechanism for bringing those people together so that you, as a collective, can say, okay, well, I don't need that because I'm a retail business. And I know you do because you're leisure and hospitality. And the guys in the commercial sector need something different. But there are some things where we all come together and we all need better services, better parking, and so, looking at those different things, they have to be tailored to the different business sectors. Um, and so and also the visitor experience, and by visitor I don't just mean tourists, I mean residents, people who live in the suburbs and they come in, they want to have a great experience as well. So it's looking at all those things in the round and tailoring it to your specific needs.
So, over time, you've obviously seen, high streets and main streets change. What
Yeah.
sort of have been some of the key changes that you've seen?
Um, well, I think the changes we've seen in the last 3 years, 4 years since the pandemic are probably greater than we saw through the whole industrial revolution in the UK, in which was over a period of 30 years. So I think we've
Yeah.
condensed everything down. And people are thinking very differently about how they live and work now and what their priorities are. So I think that's one of the big changes that's come through. Um, and so I think we have to respond to that. I was lucky enough to be over in Gothenburg. I went to the Svenska Stadskonor conference last year, and they had a speaker, Moreno, from the Sorbonne, and he's put together this concept of the 15-minute city, which he's quietly delivering in Paris, which says that if services are closer to where you live and work, that is great. When cities were set up, they were set up for men who drive cars. And the women stayed at home and looked after the kids and lived in the suburbs, and the men came into the city. That doesn't work anymore. That model is gone. So we need to look at how do we set up our towns and cities so that they work for everybody, and we can do less miles, we can be greener, and climate change is a significant issue. So if you can walk to a lot more places, and most things you need are within 15 minutes, that makes sense. But it's in the UK, there's suddenly been a conspiracy theory suggesting, oh, they're trying to stop us going more than 15 minutes from home, which is completely bonkers. But that's the UK sometimes.
And I was going to say, those services you were talking about is really, they're over and above council services. Like council would be cleaning a street to a base level. And then so the bid, lifts the standard and delivers much better quality for the customer.
Oh, well, that's absolutely a crucial point because if the businesses think you're just replacing things that the council used to do, but using my money to do it, you're sunk. So you have to deliver services over and above and additional, and based on what the businesses tell you they want. So this process, I'm running a workshop tonight. In a small town I mentioned, just bringing people together to really get to the bottom of what do they need, what do they want, how can you measure that, and if there is a suspicion that you're just replacing council services, they're not going to vote for it because this is a very democratic process.
So from a local council point of view, what are the benefits for the council to actually have a business improvement district where the businesses are sort of getting on with it?
Well, I think in any partnership like this you put together, you have to identify first of all who are the core partners, whose real interests are involved in this, and that's the local authority. They've got a big stake in this. So if you are putting together a business improvement district, you can't do it without the local authority. But the local authority shouldn't be doing things without consulting their community. That's the business community as well as the residents and everybody else. So what's in it for them is they really get to understand the needs of that business community. And don't forget, all those businesses employ people who are local residents who will probably be voting for that council. So, it is circular in that respect. So once you've identified those core partners, you then look at who are the other key stakeholders. So if you're bringing a partnership together, start with the core partners, then look at the stakeholders, and then you'd look at who are the opinion formers out there, who's going to, maybe cause some issues from time to time. It happens, and then sort of the wider community. But the local authority have got to be one of those core partners, and it works. It's a two-way street.
Yeah, I was going to say too, one of the key partners, of course, is the property owners. And quite
Yeah.
often councils say to me, it's very hard to get in contact with the property owners. Some of them are not here on site. They live in
Yeah.
another country or another state.
Yeah.
How does the bid actually engage the property owners and get them on side so they can see value?
It is very difficult, and we don't have a national property owner register. So you have to talk to the occupier to try and find out who the owner is. And so, because there are owner occupiers, which makes life a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of the projects I'm working on at the moment is to put solar on rooftops across the city centre. Norwich, was where I'm putting this project in, aims to be the UK's largest urban solar farm, which is great, but you need the landlord's permission, and getting hold of the landlord is not that easy. But the way the bid model works in the UK, as I said earlier, it's different to the US model in that the occupier of the premises is the one who would be the bid member. So you really only need to talk to the property owner if that property is vacant. And then that would be listed and you go through the agent. So really you want to talk to the people who are running the business on that site, irrespective of who the owner is.
Which is really logical because they're seeing the benefit straight away. If something's working, they can give you immediate feedback and not waiting to sort of flow through. Well, the property owner might think, well, I haven't had many vacancies in the last year or so,
Yeah.
but you get immediate sort of contact, don't you, with the business owner?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, it's different to the American model where the bid member is the owner, but there is a cost to that. And as I say, you tend to pass it down to the occupier. So dealing with the person who's running that business on that site is the key way forward.
Yep, I was going to say one of the areas you've been really involved in is the nighttime economy and the evening economy. And of course, you came to Adelaide and talked to us about that, and it was fabulous and drew a very large audience. Can you just tell us about that, where that is at the moment, the nighttime economy post COVID, and then where does the purple flag flow from that?
Yeah. Well, the nighttime economy, the whole leisure sector, but the nighttime economy in particular, suffered really badly over the last few years, as you can imagine. But we actually put Purple Flag together. It's probably around 15 years now, and that came together by looking at the different owners and the different needs. So by nighttime economy, I am talking about nightclubs, but bars, restaurants, even theatres, anything that happens at night. And so what we did with those is we looked at how they can all reach a certain standard and what those standards should be. So it took 3 years of research to get this together. But there are now very clear standards that people have to meet. And I'm still a Purple Flag assessor, which means I go out into the nighttime economy in other places and look at how they do it. So all those assessors are volunteers, they get their expenses paid, but it's a fantastic experience to see how other people deliver things. So that having that accreditation gives the reassurance to the people who are using the nighttime economy, but it also, like bids, it brings the partnership together. So you get the business owners rather, working with the council, working with the police and security, and everybody's coming together to put a plan to maximise the benefits to everybody else. And so there will always be issues in the nighttime economy, but it's how you manage them. And by bringing people together through a mechanism like Purple Flag, it works really well.
I was going to say, just moving on then, flowing from that conversation about business crime, and business crime is sort of becoming a bit more of an issue. I mean, in Australia, actually, we have been pretty good, haven't really had to worry too much about that, but we're starting to get issues in different main streets. And I just wonder then, how does the good governance and other methods of partnerships actually help reduce business crime?
Well, business crime is an issue on two fronts. One is, if you're suffering from shoplifting, everything that's stolen from you is an impact on your bottom line. Mm-hmm. But the other thing we've seen a huge growth of since COVID is actually the abuse and assaults on staff. People seem to be much more aggressive. And as a former store manager myself, although it's a long time ago now, I think back in those days, I was much younger, and if I saw a shoplifter, I do remember chasing one down the street once, and until a bread knife fell out of his coat, and then I decided not to do that anymore. But anyway, you do have to be very careful. So the thing about this is that I used my experience with Purple Flag to create a set of standards for business crime reduction partnerships. So these are things that there are now hundreds of these across the UK. They're often allied to bids. Sometimes they're part of the same organisation. But if you set up a business crime reduction partnership, you're protecting the people who work in business, but also their property, their assets, and those sorts of things. And one of the key things you can do if you set this up properly, you'll get much better cooperation with the police. And if you are accredited, we're finding in the UK, the police services are willing to share information with you, share data with you, share images, because they know you're set up in a legitimate way. You've got controls in place to make sure you're looking after personal data. It's not going to be published on the internet or any of that type of stuff. So having the controls in place makes people much more willing to share with each other and with the authorities.
There's nothing that I don't like to hear more is when a retailer says, well, we just let the shoplifters take the product and we're not going to challenge them. And you think, wow, something has gone wrong there if we're sort of allowing that they just walk out the door with a bag full of stuff. That's obviously a big bottom line cost, and there's got to be some way of trying to combat that.
Yeah, and this does this. So businesses share information on individuals, and then if somebody is caught, you've got an evidence base to say, yeah, but they also committed an offence in X, Y, Z over this 3-month period, and they get what they deserve because you've got the evidence together to prove that this individual, you want to keep him out of town.
Yes.
So if somebody Googled BCRP national standards in the UK, you'd see I wrote those national standards. That would come up, and they could see how we put this together.
I was going to say another thing you've always said is talking about, working together is obviously
Yeah.
better. Can you tell us, just a bit about that? That's about partnerships and more.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the whole ethos of what I've been doing for the last 25 years. As I say, I was a store manager and I was inside my four walls and I didn't really have any need to go out until I was asked to join this committee. And then I realized actually there's a whole world outside my front door. And I realized that, by working together and collaborating, you can get much better results. So this whole better together is the ethos of whether it's through a business improvement district or whether it's through Purple Flag and bringing the people together, whether it's through business crime reduction partnerships, it doesn't matter. It's about going through that process, maybe using the grow model to look at how we've all got in common, what our aspirations are, and how we can pull it together. But doing that together, you definitely get much better outcomes, but people are much happier about being consulted, being part of the story, being part of the process, and doing things as opposed to having things done to them. But to do that, you have to get involved.
Well, thank you so much, Martin. I can't believe that time has gone so quickly, but your knowledge is amazing, and it's been a pleasure talking to you. So please look
Nice to
up
see you again.
Martin's details. It's fabulous to talk to a place management consultant who's got so much experience. So thank you once again.
My pleasure.